Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you. I want to thank the Prime Minister for his words and join him in offering heartfelt condolences to Joe's family. It was in 1969 when Labor and Liberal contested the seat of Perth, and it was Joe who won the federal seat of Perth against Fred Chaney. And he was very proud that his campaign featured what he claimed was the first television ad in West Australian politics. Years later, he was still delighted in walking people through the storyboard. There was a lady who asked, "Who are you going to vote for?" She'd said she'd vote for Joe Berinson. They said, "Why?" And she gave some fine reason about this fellow. Then we had Kim Beazley Sr. They asked him why he thought people should vote for me, and he said because I'd be a very good addition amongst our people in Canberra. Then they switched on to Jill and Linda. They were only 6 and 4.5 respectively, and they were asked, "Do you think people should vote for Joe Berinson?" They'd learnt it so well, they were able to say yes and yes. And they were asked why, and they said, "Because he's our dad." He really loved that. Following Jim Cairns' resignation, Joe joined the Whitlam cabinet as the Minister for the Environment. There hadn't even been a proper Department of the Environment until 1972, and in Joe's word, he said he was no committed greenie. But ever the voracious reader, he quickly gained a reputation for being across his brief and for his well-informed questioning of his colleagues' cabinet submissions. Or as Gough put it, he made a nuisance of himself. But then came the dismissal. Joe's story captures the bewilderment and chaos of the 11th of November 1975. He said, "After lunch, the bells rang for Parliament to assemble. I went and sat in my seat on the front bench next to Joe Reardon. Joe turned to me and said, 'I suppose you've heard, the big fella's been sacked.' It was an indication of how naive I was that I said, 'You mean Gough sacked the Governor-General?' He said, 'No, the Governor-General has sacked Gough.' It must have taken me 15 or 20 seconds to absorb. I just sat dumbfounded until I said, 'If Gough's been sacked, that means we've been sacked too.' Joe said, 'That's right.' And that was the end of my ministerial career. In that same year, after many years of part-time study and flights across the Nullarbor, balancing his parliamentary paperwork with legal books and lecture notes, Joe obtained his law degree. So, in 1980, when he returned to public life in the West Australian Legislative Council, he went on to serve as Attorney-General for 10 years and under 3 premiers, as we've heard. And after politics, Joe became President of the Jewish Community Council of Western Australia, carrying on a lifetime of service to his faith and to the Carmel School in particular. And his legacy as a cabinet nuisance lived on in the school's AGM. The principal wrote in his tribute to Joe, and I quote, "The only audience questions that the board were apprehensive about were those posed by Mr Berinson." I think, though, the final words, Mr Speaker, belong to his family. They said, "In life he did that which is asked of man. Act justly, love mercy, walk humbly with God. May he rest in peace."
The question is that the motion moved by the Honourable the Prime Minister be agreed to. As a mark of respect, I ask all present to signify their approval by rising in their places. I thank the House.